This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So the Cavs went out in probably a more disappointing way than you could have imagined. Like, I imagined ways that it could have let us down, and I was thinking maybe it'd be a 6-game series where we lose to the Knicks, but it could have this was a series that wasn't, hey, we were one ball bounce away or we were one coaching adjustment away. Nah, it was clear we were never winning this series. We were healthy too. That's the thing that bugs me. This was a healthy team. They have no excuse for why it went so bad other than they're just not better.
Yeah.
And that was a demoralizing defeat in the playoffs. I don't know how you feel about it, but that's definitely how I was like, wow.
Yeah.
It got demoralizing in game 4 when it was like, oh, we just can't do nothing about this. Mm-hmm. Because game 1 happened, we're like, aberration, right? Game 2 happened, we're thinking, okay, game 3, I'm a little nervous, but it's the first day in the Garden, like, okay. Game 4 is like, okay.
Yeah.
There's some issues. And then game 5 was like, are we playing bad or are we playing like this because we stink?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's the conversation I've been having with people because, like you mentioned, it would be so much easier if you could just place it on one thing. Like if the ball just, dropped differently, or if this call wasn't made, maybe we would have won. And then it feels almost a little better because you can justify it. There is no justification for what we just watched in those games. I mean, it was worse than I even thought possible for this team, just based on what we saw from them throughout the regular season. I thought there was a chance they could kind of crack under the pressure as such a young team, but I did not think it would be at the level that it was and to go down the way they did, especially like you said. I thought maybe we'd push it to 6. Losing at home like that at the end, it was brutal to watch.
It wasn't competitive.
No.
Right? Like it wasn't even competitive. Like, I don't even know if they cracked under the pressure or if they just stunk.
Yeah.
Like or they were just, the matchups were so bad for them. Like, a lot of people, and look, when your team disappoints, the first thing people are going to go to is the coach. So it's not a surprise.
Right.
But whether it makes sense or not. And a lot of people are going at JB. And I'm like, what do y'all want JB to do? Like, he can't adjust his way out of Jared Allen being dominated physically.
I know.
Like, when our best option is, man, throw Rolo out there, or
no big depth, yeah,
or throw a 6'6" Lamar Stevens at center because we're just desperate. That tells you that we're in a place to where our problems are bigger than any coaching adjustment, any lineup adjustment, right? Like, a lot of crying for like Isaac Okoro to go out there. Could that have helped? Sure. It would have did something here or there along the margins, but would it have stopped what Jalen Brunson had did to this team all series? You're crazy if you think that. Like, that's insane. Jalen Brunson played far too good. Also, Knicks made the big shots when it mattered, right? Every time the Cavs in this series had like a 15-5 run or a 10-2 run, what did the Knicks do? Hit a big corner 3. And it didn't matter who shot it. Josh Hart, Obi Toppin, Jalen Brunson, hell, even Julius Randle did it to us, right? Like, it did not matter who was out there taking the shots. They made the shots. But you look at the Cavs, Darius Garland brought this team back within punching range 2 times in the last 2 games of this series. That's the only person I don't have a problem with on this team right now is Darius Garland. I know people are going to be upset because he didn't score a bunch of points in game 1 and he didn't do well in game 2, but anybody blaming any of these losses on Darius Garland is missing the point of what really went wrong in this series, because he's the only reason you won game 2, and he was part of the biggest reason you won game 2, and he's the only reason you even thought you had a chance in the last 2 games. And he's the only one that showed up. And then we get within 6, turnover, Karis LeVert, turnover, bad pass here, Donovan Mitchell being lazy on a closeout, taking a horrible 3 from deep range when Donovan hasn't been hot all series. It was consistent frustration, consistent not showing up in the clutch. And, I think a number of questions have been brought up. A loss like this in the playoffs has a way of accelerating change. And look, one of the things we always knew was going to happen was this team that made the playoffs this year was going to be much different than the team that would be ready to make a run as a serious contender. We literally said that 4 weeks ago on this show. That's accelerated now, right? What, for better or worse, that's accelerated. One of those things we thought was going to have to happen was Jared Allen's place on this team. I don't see how this can continue for another year after this series.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was almost better for us to play so poorly and have it be so glaringly obvious what needs to happen, because if we were to win the series, even in a close way, move on to a second series, I think they would be more hesitant to make a drastic move with one of the core four on this team. But I think when you lose in the fashion that they did, it makes Kobe have to look at it and be like, okay, yeah, we have to make a change because clearly this isn't working. And, unfortunately, as much as Jared Allen seems like a great human being and a really nice guy, it was not working. He was getting bullied by Mitchell Robinson the entire series. And he even said in some quotes today that the lights were too bright for him too, which that's fine. But he also just didn't play well. You can't just blame it on oh, the moment was too big. Maybe you just weren't good enough, which sometimes just happens. He got out physicaled. He got beat up the entire time. So I think that's definitely going to be one of the moves that needs to be made. I know you brought up JB as well, and there's been a lot of conversation on, if coaching would be the difference. And I'm kind of with you on look, I do not think JB did a great job overall. I didn't earlier in the series, the Ricky minutes that were happening. There were some rotation
the Dean
things.
Wade 7 minutes.
Dean Wade 7 minutes. Yeah, there were rotation things that were pretty egregious and hard to watch. But at the same time, you should expect your four best players that everyone has touted as these, all-star caliber type players in this league, that they should be able to perform on this stage. And it is incredibly hard to coach and come up with rotations when 3 out of the 4 of them in every single game aren't playing even close to what they are supposed to be doing. People kept bringing up oh, if we would have kept Kevin Love, maybe that wasn't going to make a difference. None of those things would make a difference.
Kevin Love isn't fixing what was wrong with the whole Mitchell Robinson
definitely
thing.
Not. And even me being oh, I want Lamar Stevens to get more minutes. I do think he should have gotten more, but I don't think that was going to change the series by any means. So I think it is so easy to go to coaching so quickly to blame all of the larger issues when sometimes it's just roster construction and talent in general. The talent wasn't there. And like you said, Nick showed up, they made their shots. That's not something that, you can just out coach in those situations.
Yeah. It's just I don't even know if I have enough to really judge him as a coach. A lot of the things I heard were oh, well, he went to this double team on Jalen Brunson and it led to open threes. It's yeah, because that's what's going to happen when you double team. And what were they supposed? Were they supposed to not double team Jalen Brunson, who was firing this team up? Absolutely. Firing this team up, so it's what do you do? You're damned if you do, you damned if you don't. When your team stinks like this in the playoffs, ain't nothing gonna look like a great choice coaching wise. But we have to look ourselves in the face. We did not lose in 5 games to the Knicks because of coaching. We lost in 5 games to the Knicks because Mitchell Robinson was better than our entire front court and Jalen Brunson was better than our entire back court. Until we have answers for that, we can't sit here and look at coaching as the issue. The problem was the players on the floor, right? And for those of you who might not understand why Jared Allen is being kind of singled out here as the problem, it's because if you watch those games, and I beg you to do it, it's not that I get he said the lights were bright, but one, Jared, you've been in the playoffs. It's not an excuse for you. You're too old for that. Two, and you played in New York. You played in Brooklyn. It's not the same as the Garden, but come on, to use that as an excuse almost makes me want to trade you even more, because how are bright lights the reason you weren't, if you weren't making jumpers, all right, okay, it felt a little weird. You getting boxed out completely by Mitchell Robinson has nothing to do with the lights being bright. It has everything to do with you not being tough enough to get to handle that responsibility. Yeah. You got completely outmaneuvered, out physicaled by Mitchell Robinson, and you can't even admit it. You got to blame on something else. It's like, come on, man. And he's a really nice dude, and you know, I don't think that should go unnoticed. But it's also like, we got too many nice dudes, it feels like, on this team.
That might be the issue. Like, we kept saying it's a nice group of young guys, but like, that doesn't help you in the playoffs. That doesn't help you win games when the Knicks are just crushing you on every single part of the game.
And there is no fight back, right? No. And I think that was one of the biggest issues. Was like, I jokingly said this, but the fact that there was not one almost skirmish in this series is ridiculous. The Knicks were begging you, right?
Yeah. And it should have made them more mad. Yeah, they should have been more angry.
Yeah, and here's why I think what happened was, like, the Knicks were like, yo, they're afraid of us. Like, and that gave them the extra confidence to just dominate them. Once they realized that the Cavs were like afraid of them physically, intimidated by them, right? And it's not that like Mitchell Robinson's that much bigger than Jared Allen. It's not that Jared Allen doesn't know how to rebound, but for whatever reason, he could do nothing. I saw Evan Mobley be able to box out Mitchell Robinson. It's possible. Mitchell's a really good player. He's not that good though. Right.
Like, and Evan is smaller than Jarrett too. So if Evan has the capability to do that, then Jarrett definitely should be able to do that.
That's Jarrett's job.
Yeah.
Like, Jarrett's job is to handle a dude like Mitchell Robinson so you can have Evan Mobley be free. If Jarrett can't do that on this team, then he really doesn't serve a purpose anymore, especially if we're transitioning from, hey, we want to have regular season success to postseason success. Because yes, Jared Allen's going to be helpful if you keep him on this team in a regular season again. But the problem is, you're going to run into the same problem because Milwaukee is not going anywhere unless Giannis requests a trade. And even then, they're still bigger than you, right? Yeah. The Sixers are not going anywhere. Boston is not going anywhere. If you think Mitchell Robinson was a problem, wait until you meet the Time Lord. Yeah. Right? Like, Robert Williams is bigger and stronger and much tougher. Like, so in the Knicks, they don't look like they're going anywhere. So if you want to advance in the playoffs, you got to be able to handle that problem. And if Jared Allen is not up to the task, and nothing I saw in that series tells me he's up to the task, then we're wasting time. Like, we might be worse in the regular season, but we would be better in the postseason if we made a move there. Now, I don't know what move is going to be available. That's going to be a July conversation.
Yes.
Ultimately. But a move needs to be made there. Like, they need to have, and we didn't talk about this all year, they don't have an actual backup center.
No. It's like you have to go to Rolo if if something
like
happens.
The only backup center on the team are guys who play in garbage time. It's who's the guy they have in the G League? He's like a tweener.
I'm trying to remember which
Matabuki.
Diakite.
Diakite. And where was I at with my Diakite?
His first name is like Mamadi or something. I don't know how to say it.
Diakite and Rolo. And they don't play meaningful minutes on this team.
No.
So if the wheels fell off with Jared Allen, where were we supposed to go? Like, a lot of these things that people are complaining about with JB, I'm like, this is a Kobe Altman issue.
I know. It's a roster construction issue. Yeah. Like, we didn't have the resources that JB needed in order to create these successful rotations. Like,
even like, okay, you trade Lauri Markkanen in the Donovan Mitchell trade. I'm still not at the point to where I think we're better off not doing it. But there's going to be a hot take for people to act like that all summer, whatever. But I still think that's a fine trade to make. But once you trade Lauri Markkanen, you got to be a lot more serious about backup center than Robin Lopez. Like, that's where I was like, that was something that felt like it could have been a problem, but the regular season went by fine.
Yeah.
And we didn't think about it. But that's one of the things that when the game slows down, it matters if you can get big. And I think none of us were prepared for how small Jared Allen would come off in the playoffs. Because I remember I had this conversation in March about, hey, Jared Allen's not a big guy. So when we go up against these physical teams, we struggle because of it. And people are like, what do you mean Jared Allen's not a big guy? He's this and that, and he's that. He's going to be fine. And it's like, now we know. There's undisputable evidence, right? We saw a little of it when he was really young in Brooklyn against the Sixers. Now we know. That's the problem with him. We can't play him inside. And that doesn't mean he's not useful to another team. He is, but I don't think he's very useful here. Now, I brought this up on Twitter.
Oh, no.
And I was like, yo, how is Cleveland going to react if Draymond Green wears a Cavs uniform?
God. I can't do it. Was it your tweet or someone else's that also put Dylan Brooks in that one?
Yeah, I don't know. That sounded like something Cole tweeted or something.
I think someone was like, Dylan Brooks, Draymond Green, and then it was someone else controversial, and I was like, this has to be a fake tweet. Like,
it
no,
might
we're
have
not
been
doing
Bridges.
this.
It might have been Bridges, right? But there is something to be said about like, okay, we have a lot of nice dudes in that locker room, and I'm not saying bring in a complete jerk, but there needs to be an edge to this team that is currently not there. Evan Mobley's not going to change overnight. He's Evan Mobley. That's fine. Donovan Mitchell's not going to change overnight. That's fine. But there needs to be just a little bit of an edge. Like we think about those LeBron teams. One of the things those LeBron teams always had, you can go back to 2004. Were some type of edge, right? Like you weren't going to push these teams around. The early LeBron teams, people forget, Z was not a pushover. You know what I mean?
Right.
People would try to go at Z, and Z would not be here for it. Anderson Varejao was on the team for those reasons. In the second run, it was JR's kind of responsibility. It was LeBron's responsibility. It was a number of people on the bench, Richard Jefferson. We had those guys on the team. We don't have that. There's not. Who's the one dude that we're putting in there? Like, okay. Like, I think this team, you can make a great case for like, boy, if a team needed Bobby Portis, like the Cavaliers are the team that clearly need like a Bobby Portis type figure or even a Pat Beverly, even though he wouldn't make sense on this team because he plays guard. But something like that. Like I remember joking around saying like PJ Tucker should be somebody we should look at because we're missing that. And
especially when the team gets down, you can sense it even more because there's no one to like slap the group and get them going again. They all just kind of keep to themselves a little more. They're quieter. Like there's no one to be out there and kind of like hype them up and say, hey, this is crunch time. We got to do this.
You know who would do that?
LeBron?
Draymond Green. Draymond Green. It makes just enough sense.
I can't get there. I will not get there. You
don't want Draymond wearing 23?
That would break my heart. I have too much, I don't know, for the years that we face them in the finals. I just can't get over it. Like, I feel like a lot of people have like come around to the Warriors now. I'm just like, I can't do it. No,
and Draymond's the one that you can't come around on, right? Like, we could come around on Klay Thompson. You know what I mean?
And I respect Steph, but like not Draymond.
But Draymond, I would say that this team could use a Draymond like figure, right?
I'm like sweating as you say. I can't do it.
Or another person like Tristan Thompson, a very slept on piece of those Cavs teams, especially that second run. But Tristan Thompson was another one that like, hey, people would come at him. Remember the whole thing with him and Marquise Morris about to get into it all the time. Like we had dudes on that team that were willing to, get to that intensity with it, I would say. This team's missing that, right? And look, Tristan's not going to come on and make a difference on this team anymore. He's what 10, 11 years in the league? Like he's well past his prime. Which
he's riding LeBron to the finals again. That's his role
right now. That's who LeBron got on his team now to handle these things. But so Tristan's not going to save you, right? You can't grow into the grab bag of times past, but you do have to look and see, hey, we've been looking for these guys to fix the locker room culture in this city and in this team. That's cool. You overcorrected.
Yeah. Almost the pendulum swung a little too far the other way.
We need to have our player personnel people a little bit more nervous about what happens when these guys are like out because it's just too friendly. Like Jared Allen's trying to help up Josh Hart in the middle of a playoff game. Like that can't happen. I'm
No.
sorry. Like, we got to be able to get to the points where it's like, hey, it's cutthroat. Like, remember the Redeem Team doc
Oh
where
yeah.
Kobe Bryant said, "I'm running through Paul's chest." Right? There is a level of competitiveness that you get from, kind of having to be a jerk. In this Cavs team, they're talented enough. They have the skill, but they have to be able to get into that place where they're willing to kind of be jerks to win.
Yeah.
Not saying they go full Memphis. Nobody's suggesting that.
I was just about to say, it's like, I feel like Memphis is the complete opposite other end of us, where they are like jerks to a fault where it actually ends up hurting them. There's definitely a happy medium that you can have.
But in the fourth quarter of games, you got to be willing to be that jerk, right? Totally. You got to be willing to do what needs to be done in the game, in the playoffs, in the fourth quarter of these games. Yeah. And what happened a lot with this Cavs team, and in hindsight, it's kind of predictable, was, they throttled down at the end of these games. They gave up a 20-point lead. They got too comfortable here. Things got physical and they weren't comfortable with it. These have been problems all year with the Cavs, but we didn't really put it together all in one place until we played the Knicks and realized, this is the issue. Yeah. Right? Like, I think the biggest issue was that, like, they weren't willing to go to the place that the Knicks were willing to go to. The Knicks were willing to go to such a place that they were physically dominating us. And in any time somebody did anything slightly in response back, they were like, oh my God, I can't believe. That's the place that you have to be in, though, in the playoffs.
The Knicks were almost built to like expose the Cavs' weaknesses, like the way they're such a good team offensive rebounding. Like, that was glaringly obvious in this, even though we have like the height. They had, for some reason, Josh Hart, who was able to get rebounds over both of our 7-footers, which was a little ridiculous at times, and their physicality. And I just think the way they were built was built to expose us. Yeah.
4 guys on Mitchell Robinson.
Oh my gosh.
And we still couldn't get the rebound.
So bad.
Like, it was ridiculous. It was straight up ridiculous. Our inability to do anything about him. Yeah. And
I did not
say that's on JB. That was
one of my like lesser worries coming into the series is Mitchell Robinson going to cook us? Like, I was not super concerned about that. And it turns out to be one of the things that hurt them the most, honestly, other than, I would say, Jalen Brunson and the level he performed at.
Yeah, like Jalen Brunson going off like that. He was much better than I expected, but he wasn't the reason we lost that series. Like, he could have played that well, and you could have still won the series. But the offensive rebounding, and the crowd knew it too. Because when the Cavs had the audacity to let that happen again at the end of that game, in Game 5, like, that's when the arena lost it. That's when they started booing. Because it was like, come on. Yeah. Are you serious? 5 games in a row, you get out-rebounded. Even in the one you win by 20 on the offensive glass. It's embarrassing for a team that's supposed to pride itself on rebound. And, look, Jarrett, he's very useful for some teams. I don't think he's very useful for this. I think, a player like a Tristan Thompson would have been much more useful in this series, and it should be on Kobe. Like, he should have had a better foresight than this, right? He should know if Jarrett Allen can play physical in that kind of a series. And how he responds to this is going to be everything for this Cavs future and for his future, because if we just sit back and go, well, that was an aberration, and let this happen in the playoffs again, like, we have nobody to blame but him.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no way we can say, oh, they were young, let's just run it back and try it again. That is just not going to be an option at this point because of how bad it looked. If we had looked good and lost, maybe I could see a world where they would decide that and maybe try to add some pieces. But it was so bad to the point where you do have to be a little bit more dramatic about the moves you're making, because, look, time is of the essence in this league. Things change from year to year. You don't know how long you're going to have your stars for, because those contracts come up at some point. So you have to be making these moves now to be building in order to try to pursue a championship at some point in, the coming years, because you have good pieces and it's what you do with them now that matters.
And I want to be clear, because I am usually not the most harsh critic of the Cavs out there.
I think people would know that by listening to us. We're not we're not hardos all the time about it.
So when I say this, I am not saying this for no reason. This was not a series you lost because you were young.
Yeah.
That is not the lesson to take away from this.
No.
This wasn't we'll get there again. Like, if that's what that's what was truly happening, I would be fine. I wouldn't be this furious with the team. This was it didn't matter. This team could have had playoff experience. It didn't matter. The Knicks dominated you.
Yeah.
This was not a competitive series. This was a gentleman's sweep. Don't let the way the games rolled out fool you. This was a gentleman's sweep. This was a team dominating you as a 7 seed or as a 2 seed or a 1 seed dominates an 8 seed.
Yeah.
This was not close.
Yeah.
The Knicks were always going to win this series.
Yeah.
No matter what JB did, they were always going to win this series because Donovan Mitchell was fraudulent in this series. Just straight up fraudulent. Just did not show up. And this is 2 series in a row where he's been borderline fraudulent.
Right.
This is starting to be a concern for him, right? Because he's been playoff Donovan for like 3 years before. What's going on the last 2 years?
Yeah.
In the playoffs with him. Like, Evan Mobley, that was I'm new to the playoffs, y'all moment.
Yeah.
Like
that. He's the only one you could maybe use the young, this is new.
Some of the Darius Garland games as well, right? Yeah. But even then, they had moments in those games where they're like, oh, okay, they're back. They're playing well, especially Darius Garland, right?
Totally.
So it wasn't that. That's not why they lost the series.
No.
It was the guys that were experienced in the playoffs that let you down the most.
Yeah.
And that's what concerns me. It was Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen who have been here before.
Yeah.
That couldn't handle the moment.
Yeah. I mean, Karis LeVert shouldn't have been outperforming Donovan Mitchell.
Karis LeVert was good in the series.
He's very good. And he's the one we were all trying to
was better than Donovan in some games. Like, it's ridiculous that we're not looking like if we walked out of this series and Evan Mobley and Darius Garland just didn't show up. Okay, they were young. They'll be better next year. That's fine. But the fact that we're talking about Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell not showing up, that's a massive concern.
Yeah.
And we should not, I love optimism. I love looking at it half full. This ain't one of those times. This is like, hey, something needs to get fixed here. Either Jared Allen was so bad on both sides of the floor that it did not allow Donovan Mitchell to play his game, or those two just played horrible in complete difference to each other. And that's even worse. So they got to figure out what went wrong, and they got to get rid of a part and fix that.
Yes. You can't run it back as is. It's just not.
No, it's not responsible to run it back as is.
No. The fan base will not accept that at this point. But we're going to need some from the desk of Kobe Altman letters to explain what's happening there.
Yeah.
But he hasn't done one of those in quite some time now. There was a period last season where it was like once a week. It was from the desk of Kobe Altman. We're playing really well. This is exciting. It was like, okay, this is weird.
It's easy to write them letters when everything going well. Now, hey, Kobe got to do his job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if we were riding a pretty smooth train upwards because we were just happy to be better without LeBron. Now it's like, okay, we did that. We did the first playoff berth without LeBron and whatever like that. Now it ain't about what we doing without LeBron. It's about trying to win championships. Yeah. And this team as constructed, not even close.
No.
They're not even better than the Knicks. And nobody thinks the Knicks are going to win the NBA Finals. And they're on a completely different tier than the Knicks right now. Like, they could have maybe beat the Nets in the playoffs this year. And maybe that might be the only team I think they could have beat.
Literally. I that's why I wanted to play them so badly, honestly, because Miami kind of would have crushed us too. They would have.
Miami would have did the same exact thing, but worse. I don't even think we get the game with Miami.
Jimmy Butler would have been putting 60 a game on us. It would
Jimmy and Bam?
Yeah.
On Jared?
No thanks. Rather not.
Evan Mobley gonna foul out trying to guard Jimmy. Like,
so bad.
We're lucky it was only the Knicks that did it to us.
I know. So bad.
The Hawks, they've been doing this to us, and all they have is Clint Capella. Yeah. And the Hawks do this to us. We weren't winning any series other than the Nets. And that
That's a
is
problem.
sobering. It is a massive, because Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Evan Mobley should be good enough to get you past more than those teams.
Yeah, they were a 4 seed. We had home court. Like, you should be able to beat more teams than just one potentially. It's funny too. You mentioned LeBron, and people have been bringing up the fact that like there was a large portion of the Cavs fan base earlier in the year that was like, I want to do this without LeBron. I don't want LeBron back because, we should try this on our own. And I hope all of those people are eating their words now, because I never felt that way. And it would be really nice to have some LeBron James in that series right now.
Yeah, it feels good to do it on your own until you realize, it's like, I want to live out of my own. And then your first bill come in and you realize the internet costs what?
Yes. It's not so fun anymore.
All of a sudden, living at home's not that bad, right?
I think we got so used to winning playoff series like nothing. Like it was like a regular season game to us at a certain point that we forgot how hard it actually is to do that. And LeBron would certainly be someone who would put a little fire into everyone, because we're watching him do it right now with the Lakers. I mean, and I miss it. Like I keep tweeting like, LeBron, come help, come back.
But that's a serious, because seriously too, I really do think the only team the Cavs would have beaten in the playoffs this year would have been the Nets. Maybe. Yeah. Because they're definitely not beating, we saw what they look like against the Hawks. They look awful against the Hawks. Yeah. Both times they played them. I was at those games. They look awful. So they weren't beating the Hawks. They weren't going to beat the Heat. Get out of here. They weren't beating the Heat in this series.
Nope.
We had less hope in them beating the Heat than the Knicks. And we just saw what happened with the Knicks. Is the Cavs were a 4 seed, but in reality, they might have been the 8 seed in this playoffs, or the 7 seed in this playoffs. And well, now we know.
Yep.
And now it's about how do you go about fixing and adjusting that, because you can't know this and just hope that nobody gets better next year, right? Yep. That's a must make adjustment type year. And if they fire the coach and that's it, that's not enough.
No.
You know what I mean? The coaching change, that's not going to move me one way or another. That's not going to change the problems on this team. The problems on this team are with the roster construction, and it's all about who they bring in and who they move out this offseason.
Yeah, I know the fan base will probably celebrate if JB is gone, and I don't think I'll be I'm not here trying to defend JB to the death. I know he made mistakes and he was not the best coach in that series for sure, and there were things he could have done better, but there are so many more issues, like you said, that it's not going to solve much if you make that change. There's deeper issues with this team right now.
Yeah, and again, I don't think JB's the best coach in the NBA. If you fire JB and hire another one, okay, he'll probably be fine.
Right.
Whoever you bring in. But if that's your solution to what happened in this series, then that's a flawed solution. This is going to happen to us again with a different coach. You know what I mean? It'll happen to us with a different coach. The coach is not the problem here. We could change him out if it makes you feel better, but it's a duct tape. It's a Band-Aid over a wound. Okay. It is not a solution.
Yeah. They need to go to the hospital for that wound. It's not a Band-Aid for sure.
Yeah. The Knicks punched a hole in them, dog. It's not going to get fixed because we change who the coach is.
Yeah.
That has to be changed by surgery, right? Yeah. They need to have different players in there next year. This team needs to look a little different. Yes, maybe Darius Garland's still here. Maybe Evan Mobley's still here. And maybe Donovan Mitchell's still here. But outside of those 3, it could be anybody else on this team. Yeah. And that's really what the reality should look like, because I don't know how that series doesn't scream to you that there is a massive problem with the way that this team's built.
Well, and you have to be aggressive about it, because look, I just, not to go back to LeBron, but the Lakers and what they did at the trade deadline, they recognized the issues they had and they were aggressive. They went out there and did what they needed to do. And now, since that trade deadline, I think they have the best record in the league, actually. So it does pay off to go out there and do what you need to do, even if maybe people will question it. They think too many moves, too many changes. No, you have a limited time, like we said.
Also, it doesn't mean that you have to make these giant moves, right?
It doesn't have to be star players. Not everything's a Donovan Mitchell trade.
You don't have to go out here and trade for Giannis to get better.
Right.
It would help if you
Absolutely.
could do
That's
that.
nice.
Yeah. But Giannis isn't going to be the only solution available to you. There are small moves that you can make that will change the construction of this team, that will make it so that guys fit better in different places, and that the money is allocated in spaces to where you need it more often. Like, we don't have a single spot shooter on this team. That's a problem.
So bad.
Like, we don't have a playable three right now.
No.
That's a problem. Like, every time Isaac Okoro out there, we're excited when he make 2 layups. That's a problem. The bar is low for him.
The bar is so low. Because like Isaac played, I think, better than I thought. But for anyone to act like he was like, some incredible player now and that solved our issue at the position, no, it didn't happen.
The bar is so low,
low.
because it's like we're expecting so little out of that spot. Like, when we're at the point where we think OG Abai would be a upgrade over it, that tells you the bar is far too low.
Yeah.
Like, the bar is way too low. We could put Robert Covington out there, we'd be happier. Like, that's a low bar.
Yeah.
So the bar is low with so many of these players. And then I think that we don't have a playable three. We don't have a backup center. We really don't have a center right now, because we saw what a real center did to Jared Allen when asked to kind of play up to that level. He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it against Isaiah Hartenstein. Like,
I know.
It wasn't just Mitchell Robinson.
Right.
So it was Josh Hart.
Oh, I know. That was the worst, honestly. That was the worst to watch, the way Josh Hart was able to.
Josh Hart dominated this team, and that tells you everything you know, that, like, hey, yo, this team is flawed.
Yeah.
If Josh Hart can dominate, no disrespect to Josh Hart.
No.
Like, I like Josh Hart. He's a good player and everything.
Yeah.
But Josh Hart should not have more rebounds than your center and more points than your star player in a game. Yeah. And he did that this year. Like, that's insane. That is a insane lack of of showing up. And if Donovan Mitchell has another playoff series like this, we really got to evaluate this thing, because the reason we traded for him was to get better than that in the playoffs. Like, we did not trade for him to have to have Darius Garland be the best player on this team in the playoffs. That's not why we traded for for Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
So, like, we traded for Donovan Mitchell knowing that Darius Garland would be help for him. It turns out Donovan Mitchell was help for Darius Garland in the playoffs. Yeah. Like, what is going on? And not even good help. Like, was bad, inefficient, plus minus help.
Yeah, just missing shots that he is supposed to make. Like, that was the most frustrating part, is that he was taking the shots, just not making them. Just was not making them. And then it really did kill the runs that we were having a lot of times, because, like you mentioned, the Knicks would go back down and their guys were hitting them, and any little like dent we made in a game, it was completely wiped out, because they got it. Yeah.
In seconds.
Brutal.
In seconds. They would be up by like 15.
Yes. I'd be like, oh, we're within 10. And then you look back 30 seconds later and it's 15.
It felt like trying to beat a team that's better than you. Yeah. That's what it felt like. Yeah. It felt like rooting for Cincinnati when they play Ohio State. Yeah. That's what this series felt like. Like, we hope we could keep it up in the first quarter. Maybe they'll get less excited after the first quarter when the crowd's less loud. Like, we didn't realize it until it happened. We were the much worse team in this series. And that is a hard pill to swallow for this team. But I hope that they swallow that pill and make changes based on that pill, because they weren't the worst team because they don't have talent. They were the worst team because the roster construction was just awful. They had no solutions for something as simple as being outmanned physically. Like, they had no solutions for that. Yeah. No solutions whatsoever. No size, no adjustment. JB had to go small, because what else is he going to do? Like, if I can't out muscle them to the rebounds, maybe I can out sprint them to the rebounds. And we couldn't even do that. Right? Like, so I don't know what else is there to say. I think we thoroughly dissected this series and what went wrong. I'm sure Knicks fans will love it. Knicks fans have loved the last video I did. They'll love this video.
They came back, which, you know what?
I was on Knicks Twitter.
Yeah, that's fun. I gotta respect it, because look, I talk and I make my opinions known. So if people are going to come back when I'm wrong, that's fine. So I do respect it, but they're going to be there in the comments. They're going to be ready in the comments.
I'm just glad that the clip that floated to me on Knicks Twitter was the one where I was like, you know what, man? we stink. And not the Clips where I thought they were better. The Cavs. Like, so yeah.
It's tough.
That was a fun week. That was a fun week, but that's definitely why I just need to make that video so I wasn't mad for the rest of the day. Like, I need to let that out. But that's gonna be it here. We have dissected this. We'll be back around free agency. The Cavs won't really have anything to do in the draft.
Nope.
We'll be back around free agency. Hopefully some moves get made. Hopefully some adjustments get made. But for Ab, this is Quincy. Make sure you check out Ab on Twitter, Abby_Mueller_. Also check her out on Spotify. She has a podcast, Just a Girl from Cleveland, where she covers Ohio State football, well, Ohio State athletics in general. The Browns, the Guardians, fun stuff, right? The Guardians.
Everything is falling apart, honestly. That's what's happening.
You know what I mean? It's fine. It's fine. It's like the dog in the fire meme. You know, but check her out there if you want analysis there. She also does a SI Digest article on the Cleveland Browns. So check her out on all of those spaces. But everybody else, have a great day. Have a good night. And tell me down below, what adjustments, what trades do you think the Cavs should make to make this team better? Because I know y'all got opinions. I want to see.
I want to hear.